back at it. Most wouldn't know this, but we got Kristy Rose Follmar on second time. We're going to call her Rose because that's the feel that she feels called to now. So we'll get into that. But we recorded it with her before. Things didn't work out very well, but it was valuable enough to bring her back because the message and the lessons that we discussed were impactful. And we had a great time. And so we're going to run it back and hopefully be a little bit better. But even if it's not, even if it's a little bit worse, it's still going to be good enough. And it's we had a great time on with Rose last time. So first, Rose, welcome back to the show. Thanks for doing this again.
I appreciate it. Glad our internet connection is much better this time. So that was round one.
Yes.
Round two. Here we go.
Round two. So at the time, Rose was our first female lady that we had on the show, but now she's not. But here's how we got connected with her. Of all people, Sarah Wright in my gym, she said, "Hey Jim, why don't you have some more females on the show?" I'm like, "Girl, I'd be happy to just make some introductions. I don't know that many." And she goes, "Well, what about, Follmar?" I'm like, "Who's that?" She goes, "Boxer, rock steady." I go, "Okay, tell me more." So Sarah Wright in the gym used to work out at Rock Steady Boxing, and Rose was the head trainer there. And so she said, "Hey, get a hold of her," and I did. And so a little bit about Rose before we even get into it. Played a number of sports growing up, softball, cross country, track. But 2000, 2001, well, even a little bit before that, she got into boxing and then started competing. And then 2000 and 2001, locally in Indiana, she won the whole Golden Gloves for the whole state. Next year, turns pro in 2002. And over the next 20 years, from 2002 to 22, she's inducted in the Indiana Boxing Hall of Fame. So she went 19-6 or 16-2 overall as a pro, 9 knockouts, and won the title 2 different times. So in addition to that, as an athlete, headed up Rock Steady Boxing, which is a gym for people that want to do more boxing, but primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's for those with Parkinson's disease.
Correct.
It's a 501c3 nonprofit, and it works with those folks that have that affliction and improving everything physically, neurologically in a non-contact way had tremendous benefits. And that entire company started here in Indiana and has now over 800 plus affiliates across the country. And Rose was the program director. So those are 2 different lives, and she has a third one. Has done some things on the video production side. So we're gonna get into all of that. Kristy, welcome back. Just briefly, just bring us up to speed on how you went from, junior high, high school into the boxing world. Tell us briefly about your athletic progression through that and how it ended up at boxing.
Yeah. And again, thank you so much for having me on the show. And thank you, Sarah, for making the recommendation, because what I love about the culture of this podcast is that it's geared towards young athletes and, junior high school, maybe even collegiate athletes, and kind of how sports have helped to mold those individuals into successful adults or not. And, my background in athletics as a young girl definitely has had a huge impact on who I am today. I grew up in a small city, small town, Cedar Lake, Indiana, which is up in Northwest Indiana in the Chicago corner. And we like to call it's called the region, respectfully. And so it's kind of a gritty part of Indiana. And I just loved, I've just always been kind of a tomboy, and I come from a huge Irish Catholic family. Mom and dad's side both had, my mom had 8 brothers and sisters. Dad had 6, and both sides of the family were very athletic. On my mom's side, there was, my grandfather, my mom's dad, played basketball for Loyola. And she has several brothers and sisters who went on to become collegiate athletes. Of course, I have a lot of cousins now who are collegiate athletes. So mom's side, very successful athletes. And then my dad's side, they were a little bit more, I wouldn't say they were participants in organized sports, if you will. They were from South Chicago, just a little bit more gritty. Dad had, of his siblings, 4 brothers, and they were kind of the scrappers of his neighborhood, South Chicago. They were little guys, but they had this reputation of being kind of the badasses in the neighborhood. neither family's had a lot of money growing up. So my dad's side, he and his brothers got into bike riding, snowmobiling, dirt bike racing, and fighting. There's always a lot of great family stories of the brothers, kind of teaming up. A lot of bigger kids in the neighborhood. I'm actually taller than all of my uncles. I would have been taller than my dad. They're all like 5'3" to 5'7", so little scrappers, but everybody was afraid of them, and they were troublemakers. So they have this reputation of being little badass Irishmen, and because of that, I grew up. My dad was a huge fan of boxing and roughhousing. They're very much still into dirt bikes, four-wheelers, quads, snowmobiling. So I kind of grew up in that environment of, getting to express my tomboyness and riding quads. And Dad taught my brother and I on an early age how to throw punches. It was always from, the early days I can remember. He was always big on being able to protect yourself and taking a stand against bullies and making yourself known as somebody people don't want to mess with. So roughhousing, was kind of was just a fun thing. That was just how my dad grew up. So that's how he raised us. So I always wanted to join organized sports, and, you kind of have to wait till junior high to get involved in the school athletics. But I was a 4-sport athlete all through high school. And, the boxing really, it was something that was fun back in those days, as something I did with my dad as kind of daddy's little girl. But I was kind of just getting into sports, running track and basketball in junior high. And I was in 8th grade, 13 years old. And my dad did what I like to call he just made a stupid decision. Had a fight with my mother, and some adult things happened that at the time I couldn't quite understand as a young teenager. Had an affair that, I'm open to talk about it now. He fell in love with somebody, and there was a lot of confusion in the family. And I learned a lot more about this as an adult, but, Mom called him out, and they had decided they were going to work things out. They wanted to keep the family together. And one morning, on a Monday morning, I think it just overwhelmed my dad, and he was, I don't know what his thought process was, but he was torn in that moment, and he never made it to work that day. He committed suicide on his way to work, 5:30 in the morning. And that was really difficult for our whole family. We hadn't really had any major tragedies on either side of my family. And everybody's family were, nuclear families, mom, dad, cousins, brothers, sisters. So it was very traumatic for not just my family, but our extended family, obviously. And I was pretty angry teenager. I think that age in general for teenagers, 13 going on 14, is just kind of, you're figuring yourself out. It's rough anyway, and just throw that on top of it. I don't think that I was processing my emotions responsibly at the time. I was getting very angry, everywhere I went. I was angry at school. I was angry with my brothers, getting physical with my mother and my brother at home, and punching holes in the doors, just really pissed off at the world, pissed off at my dad. And my mother had the intuition to buy me a heavy bag and a pair of boxing gloves. It was kind of a surprise, and she hung up that heavy bag in the garage, and she was like, listen, if you're gonna get emotional, stop punching holes in my doors and go out into the garage and beat up that heavy bag and throw punches, do what your dad taught you how to do. And so that's what I did. I started hitting that heavy bag, and I felt like I kind of knew what I was doing. And that was because of what my dad had taught us. And it was a way for me to vent frustration and really connect with my dad. And it became therapeutic for me to punch that heavy bag. And, that has carried through my entire life. I have a heavy bag hanging in my garage right now. And I think everybody that's done some kind of boxing in the past will tell you that there's definitely an emotional output that comes with punching and kicking, throwing, and just getting that aggression out of you. at that time, this was back in the early 90s, there wasn't any kind of competitive style boxing, especially for women in our area. So I didn't expect to ever compete, but we always had that heavy bag hanging in my garage. And I went on to, run cross country and basketball and track. And my friends would always come over and we'd hit the heavy bag. And it was just cool. It was something fun to do. But, I realized, and I still realize to this day that running, punching, lifting, exercise definitely carried me through that moment and continues to carry me through moments later in life emotionally. It's always been my go-to when things aren't going my way, to go for a long run, hit the heavy bag, do some weights, just get lost in my headphones and sweat. So yeah, it's
got it.
Yeah. But, talking back about high school and talking to the people, the young folks that listen to this, it's definitely was so crucial for me to be involved in athletics through high school. I went to a really, really small high school up in the region. So we had, I graduated with 80 people, but we were competing against Lake Central, Maryville, South Chicago schools, big ass schools up in Chicago and up in the region. And so we had to hold our own. We had a bunch of like corn-fed country kids that didn't have a huge pool of athletes to choose from. And our school, Hanover Central, had an awesome reputation for being really kick-ass athletes. I can remember especially the women's track team, before I got to high school, had won the conference title for the entire decade before I was even in high school. So they were like undefeated for 10 years.
Dang.
A lot of pressure on the track team to continue to deliver. And we just had phenomenal athletes in high school. And what makes a phenomenal athlete become a respectable athlete and team member are coaches. And, I have so much respect for the coaches back in those days. I'm still friends with so many of them. Coaches that seem to really care about the kids, not just, as athletes, but as students. So I give a lot of credit to high school sports for the kind of person I am today. And I encourage all youngsters to get involved in sports because it's just the dedication, the accountability to your teammates, staying out of trouble. All those things are so important. And I
Gotcha. Well, I remember being pissed off the entire time I was growing up as a teenager, and there was no deaths in my family. And I'd like to say that, between my wife and me, we have 6 kids, 4 girls, 2 boys. And I like to say, the girls were really angry and mean all the time, but the boys were bad too. So, so I get that. And as teenagers, they're just angry teenager. But if you look up trauma for kids, number 1 is going to be death. And number 2 was listed as rape, and 3 was divorce. So, and that's just death in general. So death with your father or someone who's close, it's going to be worse. And if you're daddy's girl, then it's probably even worse. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I got to believe, 1, there's the physicality of fighting that you guys are kind of used to with being scrappers. There's the overall endorphin release from working out. So there's that when you're hitting the heavy bag. And then I got to believe that when you're hitting that bag and your mom says, do what your dad taught you to do, there's got to be some mentally, like some kind of connection. Whereas you're still hitting this bag, even though he's gone, you're like, his memory's still there. You feel connected to him and you're still living out some of his lessons. And so that's got to be, impactful too. Next thing you know, you start getting good at it. You like hitting things. You can win fights. And you're like, well, shit, 1, I like the physicality. Once I like hitting, I like being in fights. And if I learn some things, you turn out, all right, I end up being pretty good at this, right?
Yeah, it's funny.
Is that kind of how it went?
In a roundabout way, yeah, definitely the connection with my dad. He was big on body shots, so I just remember even at an early age throwing punches. Like, am I doing this right? Kind of going through the motions of fake and rolling and going to he always taught us that body shots were, don't go to the head. If you need to get somebody off of you, you want to go to the body. That's going to be more painful and devastating.
Right.
So I learned about body shots at an early age, as sick as that is. Um,
It's not just in the
but
front of the body, kidneys and liver, hitting a certain spot, they can
yeah,
go down right there even more likely than getting hit right in the face or right in the
yeah,
head.
yeah, exactly. And we, that's what he always said. You get will the solar plex or go to the liver, and fight's done if you can get it in there. So I never really expected to pursue boxing for real. But I went on to Ball State University, and by the way, I wouldn't have been able to go to college if it weren't for the insurance money that was left behind from my dad. So I had a choice. I had a choice through that to go to college, and I felt that I owed it to my family to keep my grades up and really take advantage of that. So I was able to go to Ball State University. And freshman year, I ran cross country for Ball State, and had a pretty significant knee injury, IT band tear. And so my running days were over about halfway through the season. I was expecting to go on to run track and run hurdles and steeplechase, which was being introduced to women's collegiate track that year. And had to take the entire second semester off of running. So I felt like my athletic days were done. My competitive, team sport athletic days were done. And I honestly got pretty depressed freshman year in college. I just felt like I wasn't done. I found out, well, I'll tell this story actually. It's a really funny story. So I was kind of depressed and started
What year was that? So when did you go to college? What year?
1998 would have been when I started
Gotcha.
at Ball State.
Okay.
So it was, just turned 18. I was depressed. I started getting into the party scene, which is expected. And that's what college kids do. And
That's
I
a good
remember
time.
I had a great time. I was able to find a balance through boxing, saved my ass. But I remember we were walking down the street. We had just left a party at Ball State. It was some weekend, and it was pouring down rain. And we were trying to get back to our dorms, and these people were out on this front porch of this little house party, and they were like, come in, because it was pouring. I mean, we were soaking wet. So we didn't know these people, but they let us come into their house. They were having this big ass party, and we didn't know anybody. But the moment we walked in, there was people started rearranging the living room. Like they were taking the coffee table and pushing it up against the wall. They pushed all the couches. We were standing at the front door inside this house, not knowing anyone. And all of a sudden this girl shows up from across the room, and she's like way older than me, a couple years older than me, bigger than me. And she said, I want to fight that girl. And she pointed at me, and I'm like, why don't we don't even know these people? And they brought out 2 pairs of boxing gloves, and they put these gloves on this chick. And I put the gloves on, and my friends were like, don't do it. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to be all right. And so like everybody's standing up against the walls, and this girl just comes at me, and she throws one punch, and I ducked down. I just clocked her with a hook, first to the head. She went down, she got back up, and it was just an all out brawl from there. I just started going to the body as hard as I could, knocked this girl down a couple more times, and like won the fight in front of all these people, and they were like going ape shit. That was so much fun.
Out of
But
nowhere. So
everything,
did the people that invited you in, did they know that, hey, maybe we can get a fight out of this, or maybe we can get girls to start fighting, and then there's, hey, one thing leads to another, right? Is that what the dudes are thinking here? Or like, how does that happen? Because it seems like they're being really nice, saving your ass. And next thing you know, you're in this fight for your life.
yeah, I
Like, what the
found out
hell?
later because we became friends with these people, and I'm friends with the girl that I fought on Facebook. So it's funny now, but found out later, but like this was a thing that they did these kind of fights in their living room all the time, or they do it out in the front yard. Just that group of friends, that was like something they were into. So yeah, I was just a random freshman walking down the street, and I got chosen. It was just so much fun. So I started thinking, it was like everything that my dad taught me came pouring out in that moment. And it was the weirdest thing, serendipitous. Later that week, there was an article in the Ball State Journal about another student named Krista Hoffman who had just won scholarship money for winning the Indiana Golden Gloves boxing tournament.
Whoa, let's go.
2 years older than me. And I'm like, oh my God, where does she train? I found out where she trained. There's Muncie Pal Club, which is in downtown Muncie, like 2 miles from the campus. So I just went straight there. It was like, the universe was telling me, this is what you need to do. First, this girl comes out, tries to kick my ass. And then this article drops in my lap about this girl. And I walked into that club, and it was so different than, the rec facilities that we had access to at the university, with like the pristine machines and everything's clean, cable weights, racquetball courts. This was like a dirty, grungy, Rocky 3 style, when he goes to LA and Rocky 3 and
let's go.
Apollo takes him to the old school nasty gym. It just reminded me so much of that. It was hot and stinky, and everything was being held together by duct tape. And there was people spitting on the floor, and it just was like, and everybody was. It was like a movie set when I walked in there. It's just stunk, and so I got a trainer.
So now you're home.
Yeah, like, what is this about? But it was neat because the Muncie Pal Club was set up by the Police Athletic League through the city of Muncie, originally to bring in inner city kids and give them a place to work out. There was the boxing gym, then there was also a wrestling area, and then there was a basketball hoop or a basketball court on the other side in this old church. But what happened over the years was some Ball State kids had started working out there too. So you had this really unique mix of boxers in there, because typically Ball State kids and Muncie kids don't get along. They're, there's a lot of, there's some poverty in Muncie. And so the Ball State kids, I think, were just looked at as, the rich kids that had a chance to go to school, just completely different breed of kids, or early, young 20 somethings. But it didn't matter at the Pal Club. We were all fighters. So Krista Hoffman was still working out there. And
so within a week, that's 98. I want to make sure I got the timeline right?
Yeah. 98. Well, yeah. So this was going into my sophomore year. Yeah. At the end of my sophomore year, or end of my freshman year.
Gotcha. Okay.
So my coach, Mark Limerick, apparently Krista was the first woman that he had ever trained. He'd always had trained men before. And he did not want another girl in the gym. So one of the first things that I had to do was spar Krista. Within like a week that I was there, he threw me in the ring. I found out later because he was trying to run me out of the gym. I didn't have any classical training, if you will, but he threw me in the ring with Krista. And I think I held my own pretty well. I mean, she definitely put a whooping on me. But yeah, it was just a really, it was a neat experience, because the coaches really didn't want to have anything to do with the newbies. You kind of had to prove yourself in order to get the attention of the coaches. So it was the other boxers that kind of took me under their wing and taught me different skills and how to shadow box, how to hit the speed bag, and do some of the things that I'd never been exposed to before. And I just fell in love with it.
Gotcha. So long story short, they didn't kick you out, even though they kind of tried to run you out. And I've never really tried to run people out of the gym, especially not early on. Everyone, I want to give them a fair shake and say, hey, this place can be for you. Everyone talks about how CrossFitter training is, includes everybody, and it's not true. It's a lie. Everyone is able. It's like the pursuit of happiness, but you're not guaranteed happiness in the Constitution. Everyone's able to come to the gym, but it is exclusive in that you have to kind of put out, right? You can't just be weak and soft all the time and just whine your way through, because low achieving people don't want to be around high achieving people, and high achieving people don't want to be around low achieving people at all. And so if people are there busting their ass, and you're the one that's not, well, it's just not going to be for you. Like we'll include you, but if you're not willing to put out, then there is some exclusivity to training with us and for other gyms. And it sounds like the coaches there are just used to people showing up. Hey, I heard this is great. I want to, I want to win the title. I want to win the scholarship. You just saw this, and then you got people come in and they fade away within 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months, and it's like, well, what a waste. So just why don't we just speed up the process and see if Rose is gonna push out or not? And it looks like, well, they don't know Rose she's a fighter internally, so we add some extra skills, she'll probably be pretty decent. So they kept you around, right? I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it kept me around. Krista was the first university student to win the Golden Gloves and actually win scholarship money. So that was starting to get more,
Recognized,
it was
right?
a 50-50 split of the Muncie kids and the university kids. But yeah, there was back in those days, I mean, really not even until like the last 10, 15 years, there weren't boxing gyms that were just fitness clubs. I mean, this was a fight club. This was everybody in there was an amateur fighter or training to be a professional fighter. So it wasn't the kind of place that you could just walk into and get a great workout and class starts at 5 and we're done by 6. And there was nothing floofy about it at all. It was like, you kind of had to have initially your own workout regimen because there were only at certain times one coach or two coaches there. They all did it for free. There were a couple police officers there, Donnie Garrett, Cheryl Jacobs. They were police officers of Muncie that would come in and dedicate their time to training kids. So it was just completely different type of training atmosphere that I'd ever had experienced. People were like sharing their mouthpieces and nobody had their own boxing gloves. There was just like a pile in the closet of stanky ass boxing boxing gloves that were falling apart, being taped back together with duct tape. And, if you wanted a pair of boxing shoes, you couldn't just get on titleboxing.com and find boxing shoes. You had to kind of talk to some people that might have an extra pair of shoes that might fit you. My first pair of boxing shoes were from the 1970s. Another fighter gave them to me. They were a little bit too big on me, but I still have them because they're so badass. But yeah, just a really grungy place. And you had, like you said, you had to really prove yourself to fit in.
Is it still around?
Muncie Pet Club's still around. Yeah, it's had
you
its
stop
ups
by
and
there
downs.
much?
Yeah, I do actually. Coach William Lee, who's actually a Rocksteady coach right now, we started boxing at the same time. He's a Muncie kid. We're the same age. We both started at 18 years old. Kind of started, he walked in around the same time that I did, so we kind of grew up boxing together. He actually took over the program there for several years and was training kids. And one day, a group of friends of ours from Rocksteady, we actually went back to the Muncie Pal Club and we cleaned it for the first time, I think, probably ever. And we repainted all the heavy bag structures and fixed the speed bags, fixed a bunch of ropes, fixed a bunch of broken weight machines that were in there. So that was really cool to be able to go back there and reorganize all the posters on the wall. And so, yeah, every time I go to Muncie, I drop by the Muncie Pal Club, and there may or might not be anything going on, but I get a picture with it. It's a cool, really old downtown building in downtown Muncie. It's awesome.
I'll look it up. I'll be up there this fall a number of times. So visiting my son, he was to school there, plays football. So I'm definitely checking out. So this is 99, and I have it written down. You won the Golden Gloves in 2000 and 2001. So tell me how the first few fights went, and then you go right to qualifying for the fights. It's still downtown at that Tyndall Armory, right? I've been there a number of times for it, and it's usually like 5 or 6 weeks around in March. So tell me how the fight started going. Like how did you start progressing?
So I was getting pretty serious about training. Was training there 5 days a week and getting my runs in throughout the weeks. And Krista was starting to travel and do these tournaments all over. So Coach Lemrick was with her most of the time. She was had been an established amateur fighter for about 2 years at that point. Another coach in the gym, his name is Scotty Snotty. That's really truly his name.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, he loves it. He owns it. But he grew up in Muncie. He's also a retired amateur fighter. So he was one of the coaches there. He took me to a tough man competition in Muncie. And my first official fight was a tough man tournament in Muncie. And I ended up having to fight twice in one night and won both of my fights by knockout in the first round. So fought 2 different girls. One of the girls was a kickboxer. I mean, there were like barely any rules in these tough man competitions. These are 3 1-minute rounds. So he basically explained to me, you don't have time to bounce around and box. Like, this is a fight. You got 1 minute to do some damage. The fight's going to be over before you know it. So people just go out swinging like animals. The second girl I fought that night was a amateur kickboxer. And so she had the shin guards on, and because I don't have training or shin guards in kickboxing, I couldn't throw kicks, but she was allowed to throw kicks, which is so weird. So I remember this girl came out and she did a spinning back kick right into my gut. And, we've already talked about that. The gut punch, this was a gut kick, and I almost went down. I mean, it took the breath out of me. And once I recovered a little bit, I waited for her to throw her next roundhouse. And as soon as she threw that roundhouse kick, I just attacked. I just countered and went in and got her down. So it was
That's awesome.
It was fun. Yeah. So then I think after that, we got into a couple of amateur fights, and then went on. Coach thought I was ready to actually fight in the Golden Gloves. So went on at the Golden Gloves, had I think 3 opponents throughout that first year, and then went back the second year and fought. The championship fight was against the same girl that I fought the year before. Ended up with the win both years. So that was cool.
There we go. There's the whole grit component, just to work out in that place, and then you get trying to push you out. And then it's a male dominated sport, right? And the equipment is shit, right? The atmosphere is shit. It's like that whole Rocky IV where he's training in the barn in the snow outside for his runs, and Ivan Drago has just state of the art equipment, right? And you can make champions, both ways, but how much of the winning at boxing is technical and then preparation, and then how much of it is just, man, fuck, I'm just not going to go down. I'm going to keep charging ahead. Like I'm not going to quit. That's probably hard to quantify that, but it's a component of each. And unless you've lived through all that muck and shit, you don't develop that resilience to be able to handle it, right? If everything's always given to you, or it's a lot easier, well, you're just not strong enough. You're most likely not tough enough mentally. So what for you, were you just a real technical person? Were you just, hey, I'm going to go charge straight ahead like Joe Frazier, or a bit of both, and how much of each?
Yeah, and it's definitely a loaded question, and you have to get to a certain level, you have to have a combination of equal, the grit and the fight. You're not going to go down, and the technicality, just being aggressive and trying to knock somebody out is going to wear you down. So if you don't have the technical skills to back up that tenacity, you're not going to be a good overall well-rounded fighter. Coaches explained to me right off the bat, that women don't quite have the knockout power that the men do. So you're going to have to be a good amateur fighter, a good professional fighter. Females have to have the technical aspects. The better technician is going to win the fights, because we don't have the knockout power the way that the men do. So I was taught at an early age, to wait for those openings to try to get the knockout. But for women especially, I don't know if you've ever heard people talking about when they go to the Tyndall Armory or go to fights. A lot of times the fight on the card that involved the women was the fight of the night, because there's so much action and so much technical and behind those fights, because we have to be. So it's definitely a combination of both.
Let me ask you this. Do the women lift weights much? And do they lift to get strong? Or do they just lift for endurance?
Weightlifting is, and being a certified fitness professional now, understanding athletics the way I do, it totally makes sense. Fighters don't typically lift a whole lot of weights. When they do, it just comes down to a matter of having fast twitch or slow twitch muscle fibers. And we lifted, but we lifted for speed. If we did lift, it was a lot of light hand weights in the mirror, just that everything was as fast as you can. Everything's about speed and explosive movements. So lifting heavy, especially if you're a woman or a smaller fighter, is going to slow you down. So you don't typically see.
That's not always true. That's not exactly true. You know that, right?
What's that?
That if you just lift weights and get stronger, you're just going to slow you down all the time.
I think it depends on how you lift.
It does. And if you just go ahead. Sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
you go ahead. This is your area of expertise, but we never back in those early days, we were never if we were on the weights, it was lightweight, high repetition, speed of
Hmm.
movement. Um, Not typically putting up, your 1 rep max on a bench press or a squat. Everything was about explosive movements and speed of movement.
Gotcha. Uh, all right. So this is, I don't know if it's long-winded or not. So I've been to Westside Barbell, one of the best gyms in the country, and they train a ton of MMA people.
Hmm.
And that's not their bread and butter. Their bread and butter is powerlifting. Get people super strong. Powerlifting is just squat, bench, deadlift.
Hmm.
And so they train athletes. They train teams. They worked with pro baseball, track and field, pro football, pro basketball. And they'll say to a T that some of these boxers, last time I was there, which is 2 years ago, I'm talking to a boxer. And I go, tell me what the big difference is. Since I started training at Westside, I'm so much more strong and powerful that I'm just smashing people. And I go, really, tell me about that. He says, well, most boxers and most MMA people don't lift a lot. And we do. And I said, tell me about the whole idea that you're going to get slower, because they'll say it to baseball players too, that if you're muscle bound and tight, you can't swing a bat or you can't throw a pitch. And here's the thing. It's when people get an absolute in their head, they don't realize that there's things that create those absolutes, and they don't have to be that way. So yeah, if you're super muscle bound and tight, you're going to be slow, right? 100%. But no one's going to sit there and tell me that Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't strong as shit and flexible and fast, right?
Hmm.
Then you get in the whole, let's talk physics and Darwin, right? And physics is, what we're going to talk about here is, I'm not going to talk about rotational force, which there is in boxing and striking, but force is mass times acceleration. Muscle mass times how fast you move it. So if you move your hand in a 6-ounce glove at the same speed that I move my hand and we hit each other, it's going to feel the same. And if I move my hand faster or with more mass, then I'm going to win, right? And if it's slower or with less mass, then I'm going to lose. So you want to keep raising your absolute strength, which will then enable you to raise your speed strength. Because strength is going to be king in terms of building the athlete, but the speed and power is what kills. So you got to have, if you can raise that base and raise it up incrementally, and not that be the entire focus. I'm talking like 10% of your training. Raise that up. That's going to enable you to use the lighter weights even faster.
Hmm.
You don't ever want to just focus on the absolute strength, lifting 1 rep maxes, and just the speed strength, because you're missing the other components.
Absolutely.
And you're also missing the repetition strength or hypertrophy, doing tons of reps to build the size. So you want to have those shoulders and those lats that are big, so that when you get hit, they can withstand the impact. But raising some absolute strength, especially in your legs, you're driving through the floor when you take a step, and then you're using rotational force with your trunk. And then you're thrusting your arms, right? Well, if I could bench press 500 and you can only bench press 100, I'm going to be able to push my arms.
Hmm.
I'm going to push you, especially in MMA, right? I'm going to be more powerful, right? And a typical power move like a power clean, the example I always give is, if you're not strong enough to deadlift it, which is just stand up 100 pounds, well, you're not going to be powerful enough to clean the weight. So you raise your absolute strength some, and then spend the majority of your time being fast as fuck, right? Powerful as hell, right? But you got to do both. And if you talk to the West Side guys, you talk to a lot of MMA guys. I got a guy in my gym I'm training with right now. He does jujitsu. He's like, yeah, people are seeing that at the top level, that some people that did some strength training are actually winning. It's not just technique. It's not just speed. It's not just any one thing. And if everyone is great on technique and everyone else is fast, but only one person is strong, well, that's your competitive advantage. If everyone's strong, but no one's good at technique, and you get good at technique, that's your competitive advantage. But I got to tell you that if you get stronger, you got a better shot. Now, with everything, there are going to be side effects. Like I said, if you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you're going to be slower in some areas because you're carrying more weight. Or if you don't do the mobility work, then you're going to have less range of motion. So as you get incrementally bigger or stronger, you got to make sure you're still testing yourself. Do I still have the full range of motion? Is my power still there? Is my speed still there? If it's not, shit, I overshot. Let's dial some things back. I get the same argument from women when they come to the gym. I don't want to get bulky. I'm like, well, as you get a little bit better or a little bit stronger, you're going to see some changes. And if you start getting bulky, we'll just change it up. But you're not going to go from 0 to 100 or zero to bulky or 0 to strong or 0 to super strong quickly. It's going to happen over time. And if you see things are happening, we're just going to adjust. So I really got to push and say, hey, add some strength to it. Not have that be your focus, but to simply say that we're just using some lightweight stuff. You guys are going to be, in my humble opinion, missing out.
I completely agree with you. I wish my more mature adult athletic self could speak to the, younger 20s athlete.
Right.
Because I didn't really get into weight training until probably the last 10 years. And as a coach and knowing what I know about athletics and styles of training now, there's so many things that I would have done differently as a fighter had I known these, had I been educated. I think the group of coaches that we were around were very old school boxing coaches, and they were hardcore, man. I mean, coach used to, our warm up was to run to the local high school, which was 1.5 miles down the road, and with our boxing gloves and do sprints on the track up and down the bleachers, and then run back to the gym. So a 3-mile run plus bleacher sprints. He was very much into building endurance and building that cardio base. I think that was a huge advantage for a lot of us. But if you look back at some of my fights that are on YouTube and pictures of me, I was skinny as hell. I mean, I was a lot taller than, I was fighting at 125 when I started as a professional, and I'm nowhere near 125 right now, but I was always so much taller than the girls that I fought. It was a super featherweight. I just didn't have any muscle mass. I mean, it had very low body fat. It was somehow found a way to hit hard, but man, hitting the heavy bag now, just having some mass on my body, I feel such a difference. And I think one of the beautiful things about fighting, mixed martial arts, boxing, is that you have to have a very sensitive balance of having aerobic and anaerobic capacity, because you got to be able to explode and have that power, be able to grapple. And even in boxing, there's a lot of wrestling, and clenching that happens, which wears your legs out. It takes a lot of endurance, then to be able to strike and speed and have that explosiveness while you're trying to fight for 8 to 10 to 12 rounds. So you've been in the ring for 45 minutes. So you have to have such a mix of the anaerobic and the anaerobic. And I love the complexity of fighting. There's just so many different, so many elements that have to be focused on. And yeah, I wish I wish I could, you think back to, I'm sure you do the same thing, like how you would, I think that's, becoming a coach makes you a better athlete, because you see so many things in other athletes that were mistakes that you made as an athlete. And yeah, it's
got it. Yeah, a couple things.
Completely agree with you on.
You're absolutely right about being an athlete and a coach at the same time. Way back, one of our first episodes we had on was Dan Brown. Great show, fun. It's just fun because I've known this guy for a while, and great personality. And he was a strength coach on Purdue staff with the football team. And he loved Olympic lifting himself, and then loved utilizing it for athletes, but he liked competing in Olympic lifting. And when you got 100+ kids on the football team and you work with the football team and other teams and they're doing power cleans, well, you just saw 100 kids that day in the morning alone, working cleans, doing multiple sets and reps. So mentally, you're going to see so much and you're going to learn so much because you just saw 100 times whatever the sets and reps were that day. So easily you saw, over 1,000 reps. And then you go in the afternoon and maybe you got women's tennis or women's basketball coming in and they're doing cleans too. So now there's more knowledge, right? And you take all that and you want to funnel that back into the athletes. And it's one of God's cruel jokes that it's always, if I knew then what I know now,
right?
And you never do. So like you and I, we're Like I have these kids in the gym and they're like 16 and 17. And I'm like, I just want to grab them by the throat and say, motherfucker, please listen to me and do these things. You're going to move so far ahead. And they kind of look at me like, oh man, that Santa with the white beard, what the fuck do you know? Right? Oh yeah, I'll say this, but I'm not doing that shit. I got, things to scroll on my phone today, right? Or I got other girls to chase or guys to chase, and I'm not doing it. And it's like, oh my God. And then I get the same calls from some of these kids that are done playing high school or done playing college sports, and they're like, you know what? I got a call to this morning. He's like, I was chasing around and I wasn't training, and I was out of your gym for a year, even though I'm playing college rugby, and lost my way. And now I'm behind. And then mentally I'm behind, and physically I'm behind. And now I only have 1 year of eligibility left. Wow. And it's like, he's like, fuck, I wasted that time. And I'm like, I want to sit there, motherfucker, I told you. I fucking told you, right? Like, so it's like, come on.
No, is he going to be able to? Is he going to compete his last year, or is he going to play?
Oh yeah, he still has it coming up, and he's still going to compete. But it's like, man, right? So you just want for them. Hey, one of the things I wrote down from the last time we talked, is this right? You overall, at your core, just to change topics real quickly, you don't really enjoy hitting people. Is that right? Sure, you want to protect yourself. Sure, you want to win, and you're in this physical sport, but you've damaged some folks. And not to say you weren't strong before. Yeah, maybe you weren't strong like you want to be. You still won 2 titles and were in the Hall of Fame, so that you must not have sucked. But all in net, like, you don't enjoy hitting people and you're in boxing?
Yeah, it was, I think earlier in my career as an amateur and then early in my professional career, I still really was, had that, I'm just going to roll over. I'm just going to roll over this person, just kick the shit out of them until I became, and I don't think it really affected me as much back then. I won most of my fights just through pure aggression. That probably stemmed from my childhood and just how I was raised. But as you progress into opportunities to fight more experienced and seasoned fighters, that's when the technicality starts to come in and the fights are longer. My coach used to always get pissed off at me because I would always make friends with my opponent, and it was
win.
Like before the fight, there's always a weigh-in, or there would be, I don't know. I'm just a really happy-go-lucky, friendly person in general. I've only been in a couple real fights outside the ring.
Well, good for you, man. That's awesome that you can do that. I don't know. I would not do well in that approach.
I think my approach was just that I had so much respect for my opponent. Boxing became less of a fight and more of a sport. And I respected the person that had just went through the rigors, just went through the 12 or 15 weeks of intense training that I had just gone through. I just always had a lot of respect for fighters. And that was something that our coach, Mark Lemrick, always embedded in us. The first thing you do when you enter the ring is you cut across and you introduce yourself to you shake hands with their coaches, their corner people, respect the judges. And after the fight, you always respect the fighter. And I love that kind of sportsmanship mentality that he instilled in us, like my high school coaches did. I mean, he was as gritty as he was. It was all about respecting the athlete. But yeah, there were a couple of fights where, it's the hurt sport. It's the hurt. What do they call that? It's the hurt game. And, I remember my first professional fight. I fought a girl. It was her first professional fight also. And it was all about the body shots again. She was probably not in as good as shape as I was. I could tell that coming into the ring, and coach just said, go to the body. She is not going to be able to handle an onslaught of body shots. And so first round, I just started tearing at the body, and she went down and left the ring crying. And I felt bad, but that's just the nature of the sport. There was another fight. This was actually my second world championship fight. Francesca Alcantar. We it was 8-round fight at the Pepsi Coliseum here in Indianapolis. And it was the first or second round. I don't know if it were punches that I threw or if it was a headbutt, but she got this this bump on above her eye
Mm.
that grew and grew and grew into like this baseball sized. I mean, by the middle of the fight, she could not open her eye. It was just like golf ball to baseball, black and blue. And every time I went back to the corner in between rounds, coach was like, right hand, you gotta go to that left eye, right hand cross, aim for that target. And I was, and I felt terrible, but I just kept laying into that purple ball on her face. And but it was, I remember just thinking, this is sick in the fight, but every time I hit her, hit the spot, she would back down. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a sick sport at times, but you got to do what you got to do to win.
In Sun Tzu's Art of War, he has many statements that are impactful, and one of them is that all battles are won before they are ever fought.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true in boxing and other lines of work?
Yeah, and I think it's just a metaphor in life in general. I mean, if you have the opportunity to know what kind of adversity is coming at you, and be able to prepare for that, you're obviously going to be better prepared to get through that moment. So yeah, I think that's absolutely true in sports and championships. The ones that prepare the hardest, the longest, and put their whole heart and soul into it. And you know when you're getting ready for a fight or you're getting ready for any athletic event, that if you're not putting it all out there and you're not giving 100%, it messes with your mind a little bit. If
Because
you skipped a run, you didn't go all out, or you went out partying the night before, so you had a half-assed workout. Those things play with your mind. You may think that you're ready, but guess what? The opponent may be training harder. They may be putting in 3 days. They've been doing it longer. They want it more than you do. And I definitely felt that in my last fight. Not that I wasn't putting all my heart and soul into the training, but my last fight was 9 months after my little brother passed away. I came out of retirement. I lost my little brother to suicide also in 2008, and I had been retired from professional boxing at that point for 18 months because I had my first and only daughter, and lost my little brother. Same kind of situation. He had a fight with his girlfriend, had a number of issues leading up to that with substance abuse issues. He was 23 years old and had used the same gun. And I was 28, and brother and I were pretty tight. And I felt the same kind of sense of depression and anger. I didn't know if I wanted to come back to work. I was 2 years into Rocksteady at that point. Became very depressed, and it was my mom again who said, maybe you need to come back out of retirement. Maybe we all need that, because it's and so that's what I did. I came out of retirement, had 2 fights that led me to a WBC world title 9 months after my brother died. And Merciless Mary McGee was a girl I fought. She's still in the fight game. She had a couple babies. Now she's getting back into it. Something that men don't really have to say, but it is what it is. But she was hungry. She was 7 years younger than me and had not won a world title yet. I had 2 under my belt, 2 belts on my belt, under my belt, whatever. And I think mentally I was not as sharp going into that training. I was, first time mother. I just had a new career with Rocksteady. There's a lot of emotion around our family still, and I was learning that that rawness of fighting and aggressiveness was kind of not part of me anymore. It was very much more about technicality. I was working full time, so I would have to go up to Muncie and Anderson after work and train till 10:30 at night. And on the weekends, women's boxing doesn't pay very well. So in the entire time that I fought, and most of the women that I know None of us did it for a living. It was they just don't pay the women. And so I was exhausted. And I knew the first round of that fight. It was at the Hammond Civic Center up in the region. I knew the first round that my heart wasn't in it. This girl was like talking smack to me through all the press conferences and talking shit about our family. And she mentally and emotionally wore me down. I was already emotionally down, but I think she just wanted it more than I did. And I, mentally, when you go into that scenario of a big fight or any athletic or, big events in your life, if you're emotionally down, you're not feeling mentally prepared. I ended up losing the fight. I just kind of survived. It went all 10 rounds. People still said it was one of the best women's fights I've ever seen, but I just didn't have it in me. I was exhausted and I couldn't wait for the fight to be over. And I knew I was done fighting at that time, at that moment.
There's a number of things there, and obviously, I can't relate to the 2 suicides. I can relate to deaths in the family, but not the 2 suicides. And I don't have the words other than that's horrible. And it looks like you grew from both, which is commendable. With the other part of Sun Tzu's quotes, or his many, if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you need not fear the outcome of 1,000 battles because you already know. And I talked to my athletes about that, and I was like, when you take that test on Friday, if you prepared for it. If you're playing football on Friday night, if you prepared for it, the playbook, you're in shape, you did all this, you did all the recovery stuff, you're hydrated, you're fed,
Yep.
And if you go into the fight and like you're already saying, like you kind of knew going in, hey, my heart's already not into it. My aggression is not into it. I'm fatigued already physically. I'm fatigued mentally. This lady is hungry. It's that first fight of Mr. T and Rocky, right? He's just hungry and ready. And so you kind of know going in, like, hey, I'm still going to fight. I'm going to see maybe I can pull some things out, but you kind of know. So that confidence is always going to be earned or not earned. But either way, if you're not lying to yourself, it's going to be there. And you're like, all right, well, I'm maybe not prepared, but I'm still going to go through it. So that's also impressive that, hey, I have all these cross currents and these issues that you're telling me about, and you still step in the ring and you still go the full distance, and you have what people say one of the best fights. You still put it all out there with all that weighing you down. You still came out metaphorically and physically swinging. So I love that. Obviously horrible about your brother, but then you also, God reaches out to people in certain ways, brought that heavy bag in your room, and then they, rock steady kind of falls into place. Yeah. So now you have another calling. So talk about Rocksteady. What is it exactly Rocksteady does? What was your role there? What's the impact? And why, other than the boxing piece, why do you give a shit? Why do you even care? Right? Why is it important to you? Because you could be a boxing coach only somewhere else. You can get your outlet there. So just bring me through that again.
So Rocksteady Boxing is a nonprofit organization that we founded in 2006, and as you mentioned, started here in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. And the mission is to empower people with Parkinson's disease through non-contact boxing, exercise, and emotional support. It was founded through a gentleman named Scott Newman back in 2005. Scott Newman, if you guys have heard of him, he was kind of a big deal. He was the elected Marion County prosecutor at that time. He was very well-known politician in this town, very, very well respected. And he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at the age of 36. So this was the early 2000s. There was nothing for people with Parkinson's in terms of exercise or holistic therapies at that time, but Scott was progressing fairly quickly. He was trying to keep the disease a secret from the public, and eventually he started to really slow down. His voice became softer. He was slumped over most of the time. He was losing his fine motor skills, so he actually had to have people type for him or voice activated software to type on a computer. started to retreat. He was used to being on stage, being in court, having this big over the top personality, and those things were slowly being taken away from him. I would say, I don't know that he was ever an athlete in his former life, but he loves sports. He loved boxing. He loved basketball. He's always been a sports fanatic. And his best friend, Vince Perez, who was also a lawyer here in Indy, is also a former Golden Gloves boxer. He boxed for the Army back in his college days, Army days. And it was Vince who said, if this disease is going to slow you down and strip you of your movement, why don't you let me train you? Boxing is all about balance and strength and big movements, and everything that you're doing is tiny. Let's just try it. So they hung up a heavy bag in the basement of Scott's apartment, and Vince started to train him like a fighter. He did everything that he knew in terms of the light strength training, big movements. He actually took him out running, started taking him to actual boxing gyms to hit heavy bag, speed bag, everything with the exception of actually sparring. And he was right. Scott was able to gain back a lot of mobility. More important than that, his confidence came back and his voice started to get louder. He gained a lot more hand-eye coordination, small, big gross motor movements, but also small movements started to return. And that improvement gave him the confidence to come out to the public that he had Parkinson's disease because he was doing something about it. He had at that time started another group for young onset called Young Parkinsons of Indiana, for other people that were in their 30s and 40s who were diagnosed at a young age. And they were all like, what do you do? What do you do in this boxing thing? We want to try it. So he already had a little fan base of other young onset folks with Parkinson's who were wanting to do this. So he wanted to start a nonprofit organization, and that's how I got involved. We had a mutual friend. I was 3 years out of college, and I was using my degree. I was working in television and video production, web development companies, marketing. Scott and I had a mutual friend, introduced us, and we went out to dinner. At first I thought, I was confused why the prosecutor of Marion County wanted to have dinner with me. I thought I was in trouble for something, or because I knew who this guy was. But
what the hell did I do?
Yeah, right? Exactly. But when he started to explain to me what it did for him, not just physically, but emotionally, I think that was what resonated with me, knowing what boxing had done for me on an emotional level. He talked, that night at dinner about his depression and how he had so much more confidence, and how hitting the heavy bag was emotional to him, and it was building so much confidence in him. That's what really resonated to me. So he wanted a female coach because he thought a female might have more empathy for people with Parkinson's disease. And I also had kind of the business and marketing background. So I just thought it was an amazing idea. And at the time, didn't know anything about Parkinson's. So Scott took me under his wing. He put every book in front of me that he had about Parkinson's disease. We went to conferences. He started taking me to his neurological appointments to learn from the doctors. So I was kind of on the inside learning from him. But there was no education about exercise in Parkinson's disease. So, we started building the gym in 2006. Had about 6 people on that first day of class, and it is. There's a lot of things that happen in between, but there's about 800 affiliates now across the world. It just grew like a wildfire, and has helped tens of thousands of people with Parkinson's. It's an amazing program.
That's awesome. I tell people this all the time, and I would get a bunch of bad looks because people are goofy. And I'll say, exercise equals medicine. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? Oh, yeah. Like you heard Jocko say, discipline equals freedom. I'm like, exercise equals medicine. And they're like, yep. yeah, blah, blah, blah.
One of our taglines is, yep.
We just had this summit at the gym. It was held 2 days ago. And not that this podcast will drop this week, but when I talk about building an athlete, look at their head and their body, and I know you've heard this before, the athlete has their mindset, also the knowledge of how to train and improve, and then also what comes out of their mouth, is up in their head. And so it's how they work with people, teammates, I call it. And then physically, there's their training. What goes in their body is how they eat. That's their nutrition. And then there's recovery. And I asked one of the ladies, or one of the people in the audience when I was speaking, I say, this is my mantra for training athletes, but the same is true for any profession. I go, give me an example. And she goes, she says accounting. So I walk her through the whole thing and how all 6 things are important for accountants. Your mindset about getting better is important. Your mindset about handling tax season impacts it. Your knowledge of tax season, your knowledge of accounting, your knowledge of this and that is important. And then what comes out of your mouth? Maybe you're good with your numbers, but you're bad with people. You can't do any sales. That's bad. And if you actually work out, you're going to have that. Your cortisol is going to be better regulated because you can handle stress, right? Because you work out. And if you eat better, you can have more energy. And you sleep better, you can recover better and be a better accountant. Well, this is not one big long monologue about why I said that this weekend. What I noticed, what you just told me is, you and Scott had this endeavor, and you had this mindset. It looks like, hey, let's not just crumble and die. Let's fight all the way to the end. And one of our core values is CC, which means you fight all the way and you never quit. But the next component is knowledge, right? So he's dragging you to the doctor's appointments so you can learn about Parkinson's, all these conferences, all these books, just to learn about this disease so you can then make an impact. And then you got, hey, we're putting you out front because you deal with people. You're going to be able to encourage them. You're going to be able to identify them. They can identify with you. They're going to know that you care, that you give a shit. So they're going to feel some love there, and then they're going to buy in. Then there's the actual physical training. And then all these things, all the work has some need for nutrition and eating well. And whenever you're healthy or unhealthy, it turns out eating well makes you feel better. And then how do you recover? How do you handle all the issues of Parkinson's or boxing or both? Yep. So you apply all 6, and you were living out that entire philosophy. And you went from 6 people in one class to 800 plus affiliates. So when I talk about making an impact, like, I don't want you to die today, Rose, but if you did, well, shit, man, you made an impact. That's awesome. That's awesome. You made an impact, and I applaud that, and I admire that. That is awesome. That's awesome.
I appreciate that. Obviously, there's been so many amazing people that have made it, grown it to where it is today. But I think the physical part of what Rocksteady does for people, we had to learn that. We had to experiment with that, with the different levels and ages of people. But I think going into the program since day one with that fight mentality. I mean, we built a boxing gym. We had a 16 by 16 ring. We had heavy bags. We had mirrors. We had speed bags. We had medicine balls. We had posters of Muhammad Ali all over the walls. I mean, we tried to replicate the feel of an old school boxing gym because we didn't want these people to walk into any more clinical settings and feel like they were in therapy. We never call them patients. They're the boxers. They're there to fight. Treating them like athletes and not patients, I think from day one has been a philosophy that has carried through to this day. People feel respected in that way. So it's so much more than the physical benefits that they get from balance and agility and getting their voice back, getting their confidence back. But it's the emotional connection, like you said, befriending these people, having fun with these people. Large part of Rocksteady is what we call kind of the fun factor. Listening to great music, making fun of the disease a little bit, just letting people be themselves. Right away, people went from just kind of like shuffling in, unsure what this was all about, to putting on do-rags and ditching their tennis shoes for boxing shoes and I mean, just the whole culture of fighting and being in that environment, I think is so important for people that have experienced the tragedy of being diagnosed with an incurable disease. So the fight back metaphor has carried through to this day, and it's all over the world. And 800 affiliates sounds like a lot, but there's a responsibility there as the number of people with Parkinson's disease is expected to double or triple in the next 10 years. And they seem to be getting younger and younger. So We have a handful of programs, but the people that are involved with Rocksteady are doing a great job of continuing to spread that message, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Gotcha. Completely unrelated question, I guess. When you're getting your bell rung, right? And you're in that fog and you're late, it's late in the rounds. It's one thing to get hit in the first round, but now it's the 10th round, right? And you're getting hit a bunch of times. So there's this fog, right?
Yeah.
How do you focus on hitting the target other than what they say in Rocky IV, hit the one in the middle, right? How do you focus during that fog? Same thing with the other folks, their hands are shaking, right? Their bodies are shaking. How do they have to focus also with this challenge, right? This roadblock. How do you guys do that?
I think it 100% comes down to conditioning, and having the confidence in your conditioning to be able to stay up on your feet and get you through that moment. And there are breathing techniques that we were taught, and how to conserve your energy, how to breathe concentrically, how to be able to, within 1 minute, be able to focus on your breathing so that you're completely out of breath at the end of a round. When you get to the corner, um, learning how to control your breathing so that the goal is when you come out for the next round, your breathing is completely back under control. Nose breathing in between, exchanging punches and getting more oxygen, nitrous. When you're breathing through your nose, I know a little more about it now than I did back then, but coach was always about breathing through your nose in between those exchanges because you're going to get more oxygen. Just little tricks like that. But I think definitely just having the confidence and conditioning and being able to survive, being hurt, having your bell rung is it's easy to give up in a fight. It hurts. Getting punched hurts, but what's more painful than taking punches is exhaustion and extreme fatigue. And coach used to remind us that, the nervousness that would happen before a fight wasn't really, am I going to get hurt? Is this going to bloody my nose? It was, am I going to be exhausted? Because that pain of physical exhaustion, when your legs, your muscles are just spent and your legs are wobbling underneath you because you didn't train hard enough, that physical exhaustion, that's when you lose fights, when you can't sustain that. So I was always fearful of that physical exhaustion. It's excruciating.
Gotcha.
Yep.
We had Jesse Coomer on, and he talks. He's a breath work guy. He's a cold therapy guy, and he'll talk about, if you can, breathe through your nose as much as you can. If you're jogging, same deal until you can't. Yep. And the first thing they start teaching you when you're about to have a baby is you go through a Lamaze class. You can control some focus. You can control some pain with breathing. Yep. And if you're getting ready to go off the sidelines onto the field to play football, or going onto the court to play basketball, or you're getting ready to bat at the plate, you can control your emotions and your focus with breathing. So you're absolutely right. They've been doing it for centuries. They got people in the military doing it, when the snipers are doing it. People going in the close quarter combat are doing it. So yes, find someone that can teach on the breathing component. You will get better that way. Or look up Jesse Coomer. He's on one of our prior episodes too. He was outstanding. What's going forward? Let's kind of wrap things up here. What do you got on the plate going forward with you, with your career or physically? And then I got a few rapid fire questions, which you probably remember from last time. So what's on the horizon for you?
It's weird. I'm in a phase right now where I feel like there's, the world is open. I left Rocksteady full time in 2021. Just some, it was time to kind of to move forward for a lot of different reasons. But I've stayed very involved with the organization. I think as a co-founder, you're always going to have a stake in the organization, right? I mean, it was blood, sweat, and tears to get the organization to where it was, and for a lot of people, blood, sweat, and tears. I'm really proud of the way that the organization has evolved, but it was a lot of times the founders and the people that were kind of grassroots, boots on the ground, Successful nonprofits, organizations grow to a point where it needs to become more professional, more corporate, if you will. There's a lot of big relationships happening with hospitals and medical community that has really taken Rocksteady under their wing, to make it a bigger, more sustainable program. And so my career world right now is back into marketing and video production. I work for a medical company, which I love. I don't have to be in front of the camera as much anymore. I just get to make my boss look good, and he's very passionate about what he does. I'm also I still keep up on my personal training certification. So I'm I'm a certified trainer through ACSM. I've been a certified trainer for over 20 years now. So I do some personal training on the side. But honestly, Jim, it's been a topic of conversation in the back of my heart lately. I love what I do for a living right now, but I think that this is going to be a kind of a stepping stone to some other adventure, and I don't know what that is yet. I have a lot of ideas. One thing that I've always talked about, and I tried to do this I tried to spread this idea with Rocksteady, and it didn't fly, but I've always wanted to have a mobile box truck. Not box truck, but box truck. So,
like a food truck.
Yeah, imagine the equivalent of like a food truck, but it's a mobile boxing truck, cross box truck that does cross training. We go into schools, go into Parkinson's conferences, we're meeting up at the Fort Bend track, do some exercises together with the box truck. That idea still plagues me. I haven't seen very many mobile boxing gyms. I don't know that they exist, but I think that's a really cool franchisable model that I continue to dream about. But right now I'm chilling. I have a good job, not super stressful. I needed kind of a break from the emotional exhaustion I was feeling after the pandemic. It was very stressful for the entire world. We lost a lot of members through that. The program changed quite a bit. So I'm super chill at the moment, but something's grown, and there's a fire that's slowly, hope comes back to a rage someday.
Gotcha.
I don't know what that is yet. So.
And you had a daughter. You had a daughter, right?
Yeah.
How old is she?
She'll be 18 this summer.
She fighting?
No. No, I got the girliest girl. She's super cool. She'll be a senior this year. She got into athletics a little bit, but she always told me that's your thing, Mom. She's a dancer, but she did, dancing was kind of her thing. She did some swimming, some parkour, which is really cool. But
yeah,
that's another thing at this moment in my life. I'm almost an empty nester. She's hardly ever home. She's a very independent young woman going into her senior year. She's got a great job, great head on her shoulders. I feel like I've prepared her. She's very resourceful. She's a good person. We're getting ready for her for senior year. We're not sure what our plans are for her yet, but so this is kind of a point in my life where everything's changing. I'm a young empty nester, so I've got a lot of good, healthy years to do something with that time.
Gotcha.
I'd love to be a grandmother, but yeah, I still got a lot of fire in my belly, so we'll see what happens.
What do you listen to when you're training? I
love, for training, it's like electronic cardio, just hard beats.
Gotcha.
Maybe some dubstep.
What's a bucket list place you'd like to visit you haven't been to yet?
I'd love to go back to Ireland, but I've already been there. New Zealand. I don't know what it is about it. New Zealand, I've heard just amazing things about it. New Zealand seems like just active people go there. It looks like a beautiful place, and I'd love to go there and do some cliff diving and some hang gliding and some
watch some rugby maybe, because they're known for that.
Yeah, I did actually play club rugby at Ball State for 2 semesters too.
Well, sure you did. Why not? Anything to add more violence to your life, why not add that, right? I love it.
I had to choose between boxing and rugby. I forgot to mention that.
How about sports movies?
I know this will sound cliche, but all the Rockies in order.
In order.
in order. I think the story of Rocky and how he progressed as a man and his family and his relationships is truly incredible. It's a great boxing story, obviously, but you get to see Rocky's entire life. Well, I guess he's 30 and Rocky won, but most of his adult life. I think it's an incredible series.
Outside of the Rocky movies, what's another boxing or fighting movie? Doesn't have to be boxing.
Doesn't have to be boxing. I do love The Fighter though, with the Ward brothers. That's a great movie. And again, there's a lot of adversity in the family. Here Come the Titans comes to mind. I love the underdog stories where nobody's expecting these. They have, again, it kind of comes down to there's a lot of adversity that happens to this team and in this movie, and they find a way to come together and kick ass at the end. So those are my favorite go-to types of sports movies.
Awesome.
Underdogs.
Favorite athlete?
Love Manny Pacquiao. I think what he has done as a fighter, coming from nothing, from the Philippines, and being able to take his experience and his winnings and go on to become a politician and help his country. I just think he's a fascinating character. I love Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen's one of those, talking about underdogs again. If he weren't teammates with Michael Jordan, he would have been the superstar on any other basketball team that he played with. But he was humble enough to play with Jordan and play together and assist in the greatness of Michael Jordan. But Scottie Pippen as a standalone basketball player, human being, and athlete is one of my favorite athletes.
Mike Tyson or Jake Paul?
Shit. It's gotta be Tyson. Man, what a disappointment that would be for the entire boxing world. I just don't think Jake Paul's going to be able to handle Tyson's power. But I got to give it to Jake, man. He's fought some fighters. His story is pretty incredible. I'm not a huge Jake Paul fan, but I am impressed with how he's been able to train and get to the level that he is in such a short time. I think the first time I saw him fight, he fought Anderson Silva, who was a UFC fighter. I was super impressed. He knocked him out. And so yeah, I don't know what Jake's strategy is. If I were Jake, I would just try to avoid Tyson's big punches, and see if you could get Tyson into the later rounds and possibly he has a chance of wearing him down. But I just don't see Jake getting past very many punches. And if he takes one, I hope he goes down.
Favorite book?
I have one right here. I don't know if I have a favorite book. I have a favorite kind of, I love nonfiction. I don't want to call them self-help books, but I love books that just lift you up. This is one of my favorite books. You Are a Badass. All these books, these, what's his name? Tony Robbins style, all these books that are trying to encourage people to be better people. They're all kind of saying the same things. I love this book.
Not Giving a Fuck. Yep, I got it. Yep.
Huh?
I got it.
You got that one?
Oh yeah.
So I like to read nonfiction books that lift you up, but sort of speak to me in the language that I can, kind of come from, I don't know. I
like that. Yeah. If you look like, I'm going to move my camera. These are either business books, how to be better, or there's autobiographies or biographies about athletes.
Yep.
Or they're books on how to just be better, or they're motivational. So Tony Robbins and Eric Thomas and Jocko and all them. So reading's important. Like getting knowledge is a thing. So getting better
definitely.
Is important.
If I'm going to read a book, if I'm going to spend my time, I never go the fiction route. I don't have time for a made up story. I like to gain something from that time and something that's going to help me move forward in life.
I go the fiction route before I go to sleep at night. It kind of helps calm me down. If I'm doing nonfiction at night before I fall asleep, then I'm still thinking, I'm still working. Right?
Yeah.
and I'm supposed to try to set myself up for recovery, and that doesn't do that for me. So,
That's
how about like it doesn't have to be in comics, but favorite superhero?
That's such a weird question. Um,
Because you could say Rocket. It doesn't have to be a comic book.
yeah, go the comic book route. Definitely, it have to be Batman or Catwoman. Batman, because he didn't have the superpowers that all the other classic comic book heroes had. You know, he was like a real man and very intelligent. He had gadgets that were phenomenal. But I love the fact that Batman, wasn't born with any superpowers that were unique. He's just a regular guy that learned how to outsmart the villains, and Catwoman is just a female version of that, and sexy and badass. And so I think Batman and Catwoman, they're just both hot. And
Awesome.
yeah.
How about on the flip side, the villain?
Oh shit. I don't know, I'm still on the Batman theme. But the Joker's pretty incredible. Not the new Joker with
Joaquin.
Phoenix. Yeah, with Mr. Phoenix. That was pretty intense. But I think the original Jokers from the Batman movies back in the 80s, not the movies even, but the series. Remember the Batman where he's got a gray shirt and he's just hilarious and witty. And I don't know why I'm on the Batman theme, but Penguin also just a smart little fucker. Just annoying little bastard that had no heart for people. And I'm stuck on the Batman series for some reason. Just really, those are genius characters.
What's your favorite lift in the gym?
Favorite lift? I wish I lifted more. I think my go-tos are probably I love just the classic Olympic weight training sessions with bench, squat, row, deadlift, because it's multifunctional. You're getting so many muscle groups at once. So if you're I seem to get into this pattern of I'm lifting. I like to do a lot of push-pull leg style, but I'll get to like 2 weeks into a weight routine, and then you get away from it. And my go-to when I come back to weight training is always just circuits of the Olympic weight training, so you can get the full body all at once. So I like the feel of the whole body having to work together as a unit.
Awesome. You have a favorite quote at all?
Probably. I mean, we would say this to our Rock Steady boxers all the time, which is don't let what you can't do interfere with what you still can.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, applies to so many different styles of people in the world, if you will, whether you have a disability or emotional stress in your life, or just going to work that day. Don't let what you can't do interfere with what you still can.
Beautiful.
I also love keep your damn hands up. Because that too is like Rocky said, just keep moving forward.
Right.
Keep your damn hands up.
Always protect yourself. $1 Million Baby. That one broke me when I watched that happen at the end.
Oh, shit.
Man, hey, Rose, hey, thanks so much for the gift today. Thanks for the insight. Thanks for being vulnerable. You talked about tragedy in your life. You talked about resilience. You talked about your process. You talked about being tough, having setbacks, but knowing yourself, and when your career was done, making an impact with people physically and mentally. So you got a lot more life to live, but so far it's a life well lived. And we're really lucky to have you back on the show. And thanks so much for taking the time today. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Love the message. Keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully I'll see you around. Thanks again. Keep your damn hands up.
Damn right.